Hi everyone and welcome back. Ever since posting my Aune S17 PRO review about 1 year ago and crowning it as my favorite headphone amplifier below 1 kW, I started exchanging emails with Aune Audio about the possibility of working together on a slightly better unit that will solve most of the issues that I had with it. Some of you reported that its high bias setting of 100 mA was not really usable because the amplifier was switching to a lower bias setting because it was overheating, so clearly a better heat dissipation was needed. I also reported a slightly uneven volume increase at higher volumes, especially with low sensitivity headphones. I also reported that it didn't work that well when working as a preamplifier because the SPL difference between 0 and 1 volume position was slightly higher than usual when followed with some super powerful monoblock amplifiers, and that was my case. And I also wish to have an independent volume adjustment for its headphone amplifier and preamplifier for a slightly lower noise floor and distortion. And I'm happy to tell you that finally the amplifier that I dreamed about is ready to be revealed. It's an evolution to the S17 PRO, hence getting this EVO moniker on its faceplate. All of these upgrades did cost Aune about 1 year of development and optimization and a slightly higher bill of materials, but lucky for us, the price went up only by $100, so it now sells for $7.99. And I think it's the right time to check it out. On the outside, this is basically the same S17 PRO that I have reviewed about 1 year ago, having just an EVO plate attached in the upper right corner. If you want to know about its inner workings and looks, I wholeheartedly recommend checking out my S17 PRO video because this one is basically the same. I will, however, mention that we have the same build quality, the same CNC machined aluminum case, and the same case design which Aune Audio is being using for several years now, and this part I like very much because I can say from afar that I'm dealing with an Aune Audio product getting a strong brand identity. We have the same inputs and outputs. We have also a fully balanced unit from input to output. I will just mention that besides having balanced and unbalanced analog inputs, we also have balanced and unbalanced analog outputs, so you can use this one as a dedicated preamplifier as well. We're still dealing with a fully balanced, fully discrete Class A headphone amplifier and preamplifier that is powered by a custom 50-watt linear transformer that pumps some serious power. More exactly, 7.5 watts per channel via its balanced outputs in 32 ohms and about 1 watt of power in 300 ohms via the same balanced outputs, which is seriously a lot of power for a Class A amplifier because usually such units should have the size of a fridge or washing machine, but since we have a really nice heat dissipation, it looks much smaller this time around. The S17 PRO had already an efficient convection cooling using a big heatsink placed on top of its power transistors. However, some of you reported that it was overheating in the high bias setting and it was automatically switching to low bias setting. However, I'm happy to report that we now have a much better heat dissipation. The highest temperature I saw on this display after using it for 8 hours straight in high bias setting was 60 degrees Celsius in a room temperature of 23 degrees Celsius. So this is actually a very big deal because it will never move to low bias setting no matter what you do. Just make sure to have lots of space around it and ideally maybe elevate it from the ground using some Isopax Mini or anything else really because it needs a little bit of space to work properly. This is a pretty big deal because you'll be using this one mostly in high bias setting with all of those planars and high impedance dynamic headphones. It will never move to low bias setting, and also more importantly it will have a longer service life since the electronics will be no longer cooking inside. If you're wondering what other changes were made, then this graph will tell you a lot more. Just remember that there are additional changes that Aune didn't include in this graph. For example, it now rocks a proper linear volume increase without deviations, and I'm getting a lower SPL value between 0 and 1 volume position when using it as a headphone amplifier or preamplifier. Since we can now select a preamplifier or headphone amplifier operation and the fact that it right now uses a slightly different linear transformer, the overall distortion of the amplifier is slightly lower and also the noise rejection should be a little bit stronger. Before telling you about my experience of using it as a headphone amplifier and preamplifier, I just want to mention that I want to talk about its frequency response, about its transparency, about resolution, about the sound difference between high and low bias settings, because you can find all of those things in my S17 Pro video, because they behave pretty much the same in these regards. I will just mention that we have the same good old S17 Pro in terms of sound quality. The only difference is that I can listen to its high bias setting all day long, even on sunny days, because on average the temperature is by about 10 degrees lower. So yes, this is a very good deal. I could use this one all day long in high bias setting, even with some very hard to drive headphones. Since I'm discussing a fully discrete headphone amplifier with tons of power on board, all powered by a linear transformer, the sound can be described as roaming wild on this amplifier. On some affordable amplifiers that use a combination of op-amps and a switching mode power supply, I always felt that the music was not rendered in its full glory. The textures will be washed out, and instead of getting lots of meat on the bone, I would be getting instead an almost lifeless performance that won't do proper justice to my music collection. With the S17 Pro EVO, the sound is enveloping you fully, and its sound staging capabilities, imaging, depth holography are nothing short of spectacular. I was listening to Death Ray by Chris Stapleton, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, and this is a very simple track, just a voice, a few guitars, a few notes here and there, nothing complicated, but via this headphone amplifier everything was actually playing at an arm's reach and nothing was playing inside my head, more like circling all around my head. It was sounding definitely more like an expensive tube headphone amplifier, and I have plenty of experience with expensive tube headphone amplifiers. It does not sound like a regular solid-state headphone amplifier in this regard in terms of soundstage, imaging, holography. This part is probably the most important thing to say about this one. I know soundstaging via headphones is still a controversial topic, but if you listen to this one via an open back pair of headphones like HE1000 Unveiled or maybe T+A Solitaire, the soundstage is really like mimicking the sound of your speakers. Very impressive. A topping A90D or A70 Pro or SMSL SHX or many other amplifiers in this price category will fully drive your headphones, that is for sure, but the sound for me with those amplifiers was mostly 2D, 2.5D, with a little depth, with not so much stereo separation, but this is very different in this regard, and those twin JFETs really make a difference. The sound is simply not limited, but simply roaming wild in all directions, and this part I like a lot about this amplifier. The second part that impressed me quite a lot was its transient response and its dynamic range, things that are basically unchanged from the S17 Pro. Some people are trying to tell me that the Hifeman Susvara or Susvara Unveiled don't have a proper bass punch, those sound lightweight, the bass is not so impressive and it's not so controlled, and their extension is very bad. Some are even trying to tell me that T+A Solitherapy cannot reach those 20 Hz notes. The sad truth is that all of these guys cannot tell you the difference between a regular headphone amplifier and a properly made headphone amplifier. This one right here is not your regular headphone amplifier. That would be a Class D op-amp based with a switching mode power supply. That one will sound ordinary and not so impressive really. But this one is pumping dopamine into my bloodstream once the music is doing its mojo. Both the Susvara and the Susvara Unveiled and also the T+A Solitherapy are bringing some thunder-like bass notes. The punch is really strong on this one. The bass is beautifully rendered, both the quantity and the quality. There is plenty of bass, rumble, sustain, a really nice decay. So it's not really super fast, but also impactful and has that long decay for piano notes, for organ pipes, for example, things that this one can do pretty easily. Simply put, its dynamics are outstanding, and both the speed of the sound and also the final kick that lands on your eardrums are really good. This is my honest opinion. The sound will get physical, and if you are still searching for an affordable headphone amplifier that will drive your entire headphone collection, planar headphones or high impedance dynamic headphones, then this one gets my recommendation. I won't talk too much about its power output because it's pretty much identical to the S17 Pro. However, I will mention that with the original Hifeman Susvara, my usual listening volume sits at around 50 out of 64 steps available, and when I want to rock out really hard, then that would be around 55, still leaving a decent amount of headroom. But regardless of what headphones I was listening, I never felt that it was choking down, that dynamics were limited, that it was clipping, or that my headphones didn't sound at their full potential. Later on, I wanted to know how it performs as a preamplifier in a stereo setup, so I removed my Chord Electronics Ultima 2 preamplifier and I let the EVO do all of the magic. Unfortunately, the sound pressure level increased from 0 and 1 volume position. It's still a little bit higher than usual, but please do note that I'm using some super powerful monoblock amplifiers that are pushing around 800 watts per channel in 4 ohms. If I'll be using some lower powered amplifiers, then of course the sound difference between 0 and 1 will be much lower. If you intend on using it as a preamp, then I recommend using the low gain option. At least in my case it worked much better as I had a bigger freedom on its volume knob. Everything I've heard via headphones moved to loudspeakers, its dynamics, full-bodied character and effortless presentation was now hovering all around me in this room. And if you are hunting for a nicer preamp that you already have in your DAC, then the EVO will feel like a sizable upgrade, sounding fuller, denser, meatier, effortless, completely removing the grain, the digitus and the listening fatigue. The last part I want to talk about would be about its tone and timbre. But mind you, it has nothing to do about how it measures in terms of frequency response. There's always a thin line before I can tell you that this is a thin or full-bodied sounding amplifier, a bright or dark sounding amplifier having a rounded frequency response or an extended frequency response. This one offers an extended frequency response, and it's also a very revealing, resolving sounding headphone amplifier and preamplifier. But I'm here to tell you that it definitely adds more oomph, more energy in the bass and mid-range region compared to, say, a tapping or SMSL amplifier, and also the upper region in the treble. There is simply less sharpness, less digitus. It's more natural sounding in the treble. It's like I'm no longer streaming music via streaming platforms, but I start spinning vinyls or listening to tapes. It's a different experience in a way. It's more natural sounding in this regard. With this amplifier, the music is not trying to catch your attention with its clarity, with the absence or distortion or noise floor, with an over-sharpening effect. On the contrary, this one is letting the music flow nicely. It's effortless sounding in this regard. It will impress you with the beautiful overtones, with longer vibrations of the vocal cords, wind and string-based instruments, adding lots of oomph and weight to the music, transforming a simple act of music listening into something meaningful and beautiful, something that you'd like to experience tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. I would really like to compare this one with several headphone amplifiers below 1 kW, but as much as I tried, it was clear to me that the EVO plays in a much higher league. The SMSL SHX costs $6.99, but in my case, I couldn't connect this one. The music was simply lifeless, it was clinical and it was bright sounding. Even my Wave Dream reference Art Warda couldn't cure that one. The tapping A90 Discrete and A17 Pro are amazing if you need some linear sounding amplifiers, but the final result was a bit flat, two-dimensional and not so punchy and physical compared to the EVO. The only unit that sounded similar at almost every step was Hifeman Serenade, going for $999 US, but that one is not providing as much power, but it was blessed with a really nice Art Warla DAC, so I would be comparing apples with oranges. Wrapping up, the sound difference between the S17 PRO EVO and the regular S17 Pro are minimal at best. We're getting a slightly lower noise floor with ultra-sensitive IMs and a lower distortion as well, but the quality of life improvements are substantial to say the least, and that $100 price increase is well worth the extra expense. You might observe by now that I'm no longer offering left and right all of those awards, but considering that I cannot recommend you enough the S17 PRO EVO, my second highly impressive award for 2025 goes to Aune Audio for an excellent product top to bottom. Alright everyone, please let me know in the comment section below what you think about all the improvements on the S17 PRO EVO, and as usual, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you found this video helpful, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!